Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. For this video, we will be covering Dennis E. Taylor's Boboverse Book 3, All These Worlds. As always, format for the book review, summary of the story, pros, cons, and then my final thoughts and ranking. With all that out of the way, let's hit the intro. Off our story, the Others War has kicked into high gear and all of the Bobs are scrambling to try and figure out a way to defend the rest of humanity and try and get them off planet before the others actually get to Earth and to completely annihilate the rest of the population. To start off the prose section, I'm going to talk about Howard and his subplot throughout this book. Like I talked about in last video, I really enjoyed Howard's plot point of him starting to reconnect with humanity through his relationship with Bridget. I really like that because it juxtaposes Bob 1's plot point where he's sworn off humanity and is completely involved with the Deltans. And I really like the sort of difference Taylor was able to make between the two characters. Since Bob 1's so occupied with the Deltan thing, Howard more or less becomes sort of the de facto leader of the Bobs, or like at least one of the leaders of the Bobs, because he's so much more involved with the colonization. I really enjoy Howard's plot point a lot because, like I said, it's him rediscovering his humanity and getting back in touch with the human side of his past. And I really do feel like Taylor did a very good job on Howard's plot point in particular. Like, a bunch of the other plot points are good, but I feel like Taylor did such a good job with Howard's plot point that it really did resonate with me, and it really does resonate throughout the book. So, getting to the second pro of the book, and that is the fact that the Deltan plot line has finally come to an end. Like you probably heard in my other book review for last book, I feel like this Bob 1 Deltan plot point goes on for way too long. We started it maybe the middle of the first book and brought it forward all the way to this book. It's an interesting plot point, don't get me wrong. I really like Bob 1 grappling with should he become their sky god. I really like that moral dilemma he puts himself into, but it's way too long. I'm just gonna come out and say it. It's way too long. I feel like Taylor could have trimmed a lot of the time that this plot point takes up. It would have been much better, because as interesting as I find Bob 1 talking and dealing with the Deltans, I want to see the Bobs getting ready for the war with the others, them setting up the colonies and stuff. I'm so glad that that plot point actually ends in this book, because now we can get to a more focused story and not constantly be jumping through a dozen plot points at once. And I'm really appreciating that aspect of the Deltan plotline ending. Third thing I'm going to talk about in this prose section is the sense of foreboding that Taylor leaves us as this book is ending. After the war with the others is done, Taylor does a great job of showing that the Bobs aren't as unified as they originally seemed. Towards the end of the book, all of the Bobs get together for one big Bob mood, and there is a palpable amount of tension between a couple sections of the Boboverse. And I absolutely feel like Taylor nailed the feeling of foreboding and not knowing what's going to happen next. I really think Taylor did an excellent job with that. This is maybe my favorite ending of the three books. The other two have pretty good endings, but this one I definitely feel like is the best because it leaves us on such a note of tension and foreboding and anticipation on what's going to happen next for the Boboverse. Also, this ending completely sets up what happens in the next book perfectly, and I will eventually get to reviewing that book. The con section here, the one thing I really feel like Taylor missed out on was the fact that he didn't really give us the others side of that conflict. This is probably more of a byproduct of Taylor going with the others in a more traditional alien take over the world sort of route for the others. He never gave us an opportunity to get inside the mind of the others and be like, understand why they're doing this. I get why, because we're mainly following the Bobs, but I really feel like Taylor could have at least given us a chance to be inside the mind of the others and form a more sympathetic connection for the others, because at the end of this, the Bobs do something absolutely insane, but that philosophical argument of we just did something crazy to an entire sentient species, was this the right thing to do? That never comes up, and that was more probably because the others were such a black and white villain that all the Bobs were like, yes, they were all in agreement that that needed to happen. But I feel like, again, Taylor missed an opportunity to go into and have one of the Bobs figure out these guys were acting just on instinct. They were doing what they were bred to do. They were just following their instinct. And they weren't being commanded. They were just following their instinct. I feel like Taylor could have made a very effective plot with one of the Bobs, trying to explain to the other Bobs, these guys aren't sentient killing machines. But because Taylor made the others more of a traditional villain alien group, it really never came up as a plot point. But I really feel like if Taylor had made the others more sympathetic to us, then the ending of this particular book could have been really, really devastating. It's not to say that that philosophical question doesn't come up. It is brought up somewhat in the next book, but it's never really given the sort of weight I feel like it absolutely should have been given. If Taylor wanted to intro the whole, was this the right thing to do plot point, I feel like he could have gone all in with it. I understand why he didn't bring up that plot point, but it really would have been an interesting idea for this book to bring up. To the final thoughts on the book here, I absolutely feel like this is a awesome book to close out the first arc of the Boboverse series. Taylor wraps everything up in a nice, neat package, and he sets up a lot of what's going to come very effectively in this book. As you read the next book, you can see how much of what happens in next book gets set up in this book. Taylor does a very effective job of setting everything up and getting ready for the next arc in his series. The next book after this feels like a natural extension of the first three, and it doesn't feel like it's a forced sequel. It naturally flows into what happens in the next book, and I really feel like Taylor did an awesome job writing this book and closing out the first arc of his first three books. So I'm going to give Dennis E. Taylor's All These Worlds a 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for checking out the video. If you enjoyed it, do not forget, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss a video. If you guys missed my book reviews for Boboverse 1 and 2, I will leave a link to that playlist up in the corner so you guys can go and rewatch those videos. If you guys want to chat with me on social media, again, my Instagram is Riley Murray Book Reviews, and my Twitter is Riley T. Murray. As always, I will leave links to those accounts down in the description. Also, down in the comments, if you guys want to talk about the Boboverse series, if you've read it, feel more than free to do so, but please leave it spoiler-free for anyone who hasn't read the series yet. We will be finishing off the Boboverse books next week with Boboverse Book 4, Heaven's River. So make sure you guys are subscribed so you do not miss that video.